There is a document that exists inside certain carriers that drivers never see unless something already went wrong. It isn't a safety bulletin, it isn't a suggestion, it's a banned route list, and it has teeth. Lose a load on a road that was on that list, and the conversation with your safety department starts very differently than it does otherwise. Tonight, 20 roads that made somebody's list, from regional two-laners that almost nobody outside the industry knows about, all the way down to the single most banned freight route in America. Let's get into it. Here is the thing about a company ban that most people outside this cab will never understand. A warning is what you get when somebody is worried. A ban is what you get after somebody already died, a load already disappeared, or a lawyer already billed enough hours to buy a decent pickup truck. Carriers do not write policy for fun. The paperwork alone costs them money. When a road ends up on a formal prohibited list, it means the actuaries looked at the crash data, the cargo loss numbers, the insurance premiums, and the incident reports, and decided that no delivery on that route is worth what that route charges. Some of these bans are company-wide, some are seasonal, some apply only to certain load types or certain trailer configurations, and some are the kind of quiet internal guidance that never makes it to a memo at all. Just a dispatcher who pulls you aside before you leave the yard and says, "Take the long way, you'll understand when you get home." We are going to cover all of it tonight. Regional roads, mountain corridors, desert two-laners, cliff highways, and one road in the deep southwest where a major carrier's internal document surfaced with language so specific that drivers recognized the mile marker before they finished reading the first sentence. 20 roads, all of them banned, all of them for reasons that make complete sense once you understand what happened there. Number 20, US Route 6, Eastern Nevada. Pull up a satellite image of Eastern Nevada and just look at it for a minute. Go ahead. I'll wait. Nothing. There's almost nothing out there. US Route 6 runs about 250 miles across the center of the state from Ely toward the Utah line through a landscape so empty that the Bureau of Land Management essentially uses it as a filing cabinet for geography that didn't fit anywhere else. This is the least populated stretch of federal highway in the lower 48, and that fact alone is why it ended up on carrier-banned lists. The mechanism isn't the road itself. The surface is decent. The grades are manageable. The mechanism is what happens after. Average emergency response time on the Eastern Nevada section of US Route 6 runs somewhere between 45 minutes and 2 hours, depending on where exactly things go wrong. There is no shoulder economy out here, no truck stop row, no fuel island cluster, no exit with a flying J behind it. There are towns so small they don't have a stoplight. One of them doesn't have a zip code. A company that hauls time-sensitive refrigerated freight looked at that response window and did the math. A reefer breakdown at 105 degrees in July with nobody coming for 90 minutes is not a delay. It is a total loss. The route gets added to the list, not because you can't drive it, because nobody can afford what happens when something goes wrong while you're on it, and help is still having breakfast in Ely. Number 19, State Route 20, Washington Cascades. Washington State Route 20 is closed every single winter. Not might close, closes. The North Cascades section shuts down somewhere around mid-November and doesn't reopen until spring. The state does not apologize for this. They simply close the gates and go home. What earns it a spot on carrier-banned lists isn't the winter closure. That's posted. That's known. What earns it is the shoulder season on both ends, October and late April, when the gates are technically open and the road looks passable from the pavement, but is doing something entirely different above you. Avalanche terrain on State Route 20 is not a background feature, it is the main event. There are slide zones that cross the highway so regularly that Washington DOT has stopped being surprised by them and started being scheduled around them. A carrier running high-value electronics out of Bellingham looked at a late October routing through the North Cascades and pulled it off the approved list after a driver got stopped by a slide and sat for 6 hours waiting on a crew that was already working 2 other closures. The road is beautiful. October up there is genuinely one of the prettiest drives in America. And I say that knowing full well I just spent a paragraph explaining why it will strand you. The mountains do not care what the scenery looks like from your driver's side window. Number 18, US Route 550, Red Mountain Pass, Colorado. You already heard about Red Mountain Pass in the Bridges video. No guardrails, 70 named avalanche paths, 300 inches of snow a year going over the edge because the plows need the open drop to move it somewhere. Here it earns a second entry for a different reason. The guardrails are gone by design, the company bans are there by consequence. Several carriers operating in the Four Corners region have placed US 550 between Ouray and Silverton on a complete prohibition list for any load class above a certain gross weight. Not a seasonal restriction, not a weather advisory, a flat prohibition. You do not take this road with a loaded trailer. Period. The policy language in at least one case reads like it was written by someone who had already been to a scene on that road and was done explaining why. The specific mechanism that pushed it from warning to ban was a series of incidents in the early 2000s where loaded tankers navigating the switchbacks above the Uncompahgre Gorge experienced brake fade on the descent with no room to do anything useful about it. The road is 23 feet wide in places. The gorge is a very long way down. When you run out of options on Red Mountain, you don't find a better option. You find the bottom. Number 17, Highway 17, Santa Cruz Mountains, California. 17 miles, that's it. Highway 17 runs 17 miles through the Santa Cruz Mountains between San Jose and Santa Cruz, and it has a fatality rate that would embarrass roads 4 times its length. The California Highway Patrol has a unit that essentially specializes in this road. Not because they chose to, because the road generates enough volume to justify it. Tight curves, elevation change, no real shoulder to speak of, and a commuter culture that treats the posted speed as a suggestion from someone who clearly doesn't have anywhere to be. The trucking ban here isn't universal, but it's widespread for heavy vehicles. Carriers moving oversized loads, high clearance equipment, or anything that needs more than one lane to negotiate a curve have pulled this road off their routing entirely. The geometry simply doesn't work. A 53-foot trailer and a mountain curve with a sight distance of 40 yards are not a combination that ends with everyone going home. What makes Highway 17 genuinely fascinating in a terrible way is that the danger isn't hidden. Every local knows. Every GPS knows. The road just keeps doing it anyway because 17 miles is 17 miles, and sometimes that's all the distance there is between your shipper and your receiver. Number 16. U.S. Route 491, New Mexico and Colorado. They renamed it in 2003. Before that, it was U.S. Route 666. And before you say anything, yes, drivers absolutely called it the Devil's Highway. And no, that is not why they renamed it. They renamed it because New Mexico officials believed the number itself was attracting vandals who kept stealing the signs. Over 200 signs stolen in the preceding years. At some point, the math on sign replacement just stops making sense. The name changed. The road did not. 491 runs through the Navajo Nation across some of the most isolated high desert terrain in the Four Corners region. 2 lanes, long straights that invite speed, wildlife crossings that happen without warning and without much concern for your schedule, and a nighttime driving environment that is as dark as anything on this list outside Alaska. The combination of factors that put it on carrier lists is the same combination that made the old name stick in people's heads. Open road inviting high speeds, sudden intersections with rural traffic, livestock on the pavement, no lighting, and response times that resemble US Route 6 in Nevada, more than they resemble anything with the city nearby. At least 2 regional carriers in the Southwest explicitly name this corridor in their nighttime driving restrictions. After dark, you go around. The extra miles are cheaper than the alternative. Number 15, State Route 138, Cajon Pass Connector, California. State Route 138 is the surface road that runs along the top of the Cajon Pass corridor, while Interstate 15 handles the main flow below it. Sounds like a reasonable alternate. It is not a reasonable alternate. 138 connects to some of the most active freight territory in America on one end and to some of the most unforgiving mountain terrain in Southern California on the other, and the road itself is the worst version of both. Narrow lanes, steep grades, curves that don't telegraph, and a traffic mix that includes local commuters, recreational vehicles, and drivers who found it on a mapping app that did not know or care what they were driving. The specific section near Wrightwood has been involved in enough serious incidents that several carriers have put it on restricted lists for any load over a certain weight threshold. The road's geometry wasn't designed for the loads that the regional freight economy now wants to push through it. The Cajon corridor will move your freight. 138 will charge you more for the privilege than any posted toll ever could. Number 14, U.S. Route 93, Nevada and Arizona. 200 miles between Las Vegas and Phoenix, and the Clark County coroner has been filling out paperwork on this road since before most of the people driving it were born. US 93 is the main surface connection between two of the fastest growing metros in the American West, and for most of its length, it is a two-lane road, moving traffic volumes that a two-lane road was never designed to handle. The head-on exposure on this corridor is not theoretical. It is documented. It is recurring. And it happens with enough regularity that the Arizona and Nevada Departments of Transportation have both studied it enough times to fill a small library and improved it just enough to keep the crash rate from becoming a national emergency rather than a regional one. Several carriers, particularly those running pharmaceutical and high-value consumer goods between Southern California distribution centers and Phoenix receiving yards, have moved this route to a supervised exception status, meaning you can run it, but you need a specific approval and you need to run it during daylight hours only, and someone needs to know exactly where you are on it at all times. The mechanism is simple. At night on US 93, the headlights coming at you might be in your lane before you understand what's happening, and 200 miles is a long time to hope that doesn't occur. Number 13, US Route 50, Nevada, the loneliest road in America. The American Automobile Association once published a guide to US Route 50 across Nevada and included in that guide a genuine survival checklist: water, food, spare tire, the contact information of someone who would notice if you didn't arrive, AAA, the roadside assistance people, the folks whose entire business model is built on the idea that you should feel confident getting in your car. They looked at US 50 across Nevada and said, "Bring supplies like you're going somewhere that might not let you come back." That's not marketing copy, that's a warning from an organization that has a financial interest in you believing roads are safe. For carriers, the calculus on US 50 Nevada isn't about the scenery or the survival checklist novelty, it's about the distance between consequences and help. The road runs nearly 400 miles across the state through towns spaced so far apart that running out of fuel between them isn't a mistake. It's a planning failure. Reefer units that go down out here don't get a service technician in 40 minutes. They get a technician who drove from somewhere that took a while to get to. Load-specific bans are common on this corridor. Temperature-sensitive freight, live cargo, and anything with a hard delivery window tends to go around. The scenic route is lovely. It's just not free. Number 12. State Route 128, Napa to the coast, California. If you have never driven State Route 128 from the Napa Valley out to the Sonoma coast, allow me to describe it for you. 38 miles of two-lane road through California wine country that spends the first half being gorgeous and spends the second half trying to kill you. The approach from the valley side is deceptive. Rolling hills, vineyard views, the kind of road that ends up in a car commercial shot from a helicopter. Then the road finds the ridgeline, and the character changes entirely. Tight switchbacks, elevation drop, limited sight lines, and a tourist traffic mix that includes people who rented a convertible specifically to take this road and are now navigating it at a speed consistent with their comfort level, which is not consistent with yours. Carriers moving any kind of bulk liquid, oversized equipment, or high center of gravity loads have found Route 128 on their restricted lists for good reason. The road does not care that your load shifted. The road does not have a plan B. And the vintners on either side of you did not plant their rows in a configuration that accounts for a runaway trailer. Number 11, US Route 2, Montana. You already heard the number. 13 fatal crashes a year. Average ambulance response time of 80 minutes. The golden hour expires while help is still driving. Here's the piece that didn't make the last video, the specific carrier policy language. At least one major regional carrier operating in the northern tier states has placed US Route 2 in Montana under a formal restricted operation protocol that requires drivers to file a pre-trip communication window before entering the corridor. Meaning you call in, you say where you are, you say when you expect to emerge on the other side, and if that call doesn't come, someone starts looking for you. That is not standard operating procedure for an interstate. That is the protocol you build for a road where the wreckage might sit for long enough that the outcome changes while it's sitting. The open, flat emptiness of US Route 2 is its own kind of trap. It looks like a road that forgives. It does not forgive. It just makes you wait to find out. Number 10, Highway 78, Imperial Valley, California. The Imperial Valley in July hits 110 degrees before noon and doesn't apologize about it. Highway 78 cuts through the floor of this basin, connecting the desert communities between the Salton Sea and the Arizona border through terrain that is simultaneously flat, relentless, and completely indifferent to whatever your reefer unit is currently doing. The freight ban here isn't about the road geometry. The road is straightforward. The ban is about the consequence of a mechanical failure in an environment where 110 degrees is a Tuesday in August, and shade is a philosophical concept rather than a physical one. Temperature-sensitive pharmaceutical loads, fresh produce, and certain chemical shipments have carrier restrictions that specifically name Imperial County and the Highway 78 corridor during summer months. The logic is insurance actuarial rather than driving skill. A driver can be exceptional. A compressor that chooses July in the Imperial Valley to develop a fault is going to cost someone a lot of money regardless of how skilled the person behind the wheel is. The valley produces a significant portion of the winter vegetables Americans eat. Getting that produce out of the valley in summer is its own separate problem that the valley has not finished solving. Number 9. Interstate 70 Mountain Corridor, Colorado. Eisenhower Tunnel to Glenwood Canyon. You already know about Straight Creek. 75 runaways in 5 years. The single most used escape ramp in the country. Here's the thing about the Interstate 70 Mountain Corridor that doesn't fit neatly into a single location entry. Several carriers have banned the entire stretch between the Eisenhower Tunnel and the Glenwood Canyon exit for loaded operations between October and April. Not Straight Creek, not Vail Pass, the whole corridor, 100 miles of it. The policy isn't about any one grade or any one runaway ramp. It's about the cumulative demand the corridor places on equipment across a continuous 100-mile stretch of mountain interstate in winter conditions. You come through the tunnel, you descend Straight Creek, you climb Vail, you descend the other side, you navigate Glenwood Canyon, which has its own rockfall and flooding history worth its own video. And at the end of that, you have asked your brakes, your transmission, and your tires to perform in thin air at altitude for 100 miles with no real flat ground between them. One carrier's internal guidance from 2019 describes it plainly. Equipment stress in this corridor during winter operations is cumulative and not adequately managed by individual checkpoints. That's corporate language for the mountain. Gets a vote on every decision you made at the last ramp, whether you stopped there or not. Number 8. U.S. Route 285, Permian Basin, Texas, and New Mexico. You already heard the farewell. Stay alive on 285, 6 words that tell you everything about what the locals think of this road before you've turned a single wheel on it. Several carriers have moved 285 to a mandatory buddy system protocol for certain load classifications. Certain hauls don't go alone, 2 trucks, 2 drivers, coordinated check-ins, because if something goes wrong out here and nobody knows it went wrong, the response environment doesn't cover the difference. At least one national carrier rewrote its Permian routing policy after 2017, when Loving County went from 18 crashes to 103 in a single year. That policy update wasn't a memo, it was a meeting, attended by people whose job titles include the word liability. The math changed. The oil boom wrote checks the infrastructure couldn't cash. Number 7, Highway 1, Big Sur, California. Highway 1 along Big Sur is the most photographed road in California and a prohibited route on the approved list of at least 3 Western carriers. These 2 facts are not in conflict. It is a 2-lane cliff highway above the Pacific Ocean with a closure history so consistent that Caltrans maintains a dedicated restoration crew for it, the way other departments maintain snowplows. In 2017, a landslide deposited 1 million tons of rock onto the highway and into the ocean. Caltrans rebuilt it. Then a bridge washed out, then another slide. This is not unusual for Highway 1. This is Highway 1's personality. The geometry eliminates most commercial combinations. The closure history eliminates the rest. The ocean is pretty. It is not a logistics partner. Number 6, U.S. Route 431, Guntersville to Huntsville, Alabama. Almost nobody outside the southeastern trucking community has ever heard of this road. Every major carrier operating in Alabama has heard of it. U.S. Route 431 runs through northeast Alabama, which is mountainous in a way that surprises people who think of Alabama as flat. The grades are legitimate. The curves are genuine. Tankers and high center of gravity loads on the section north of Albertville have produced an accident pattern consistent enough that Alabama DOT has studied this corridor more than once. Nobody made a documentary about US 431. It just quietly collects incident reports in a corner of Alabama, while the carriers who figured it out route around it, and the ones who haven't are in the process of figuring it out. Number 5, Coalfields Expressway, US Route 460, Virginia and West Virginia. The Coalfields Expressway was going to be the road that saved southwestern Virginia and southern West Virginia. Connect the coalfields to the interstate system. Move the freight. Move the economy. Construction started in the 1980s. In places, it still isn't finished. What exists today is a patchwork. Some sections are genuine divided highway. Some sections are two-lane state road that predates the project by 40 years. The transitions between them happen without ceremony, and if you don't know the corridor, you find out about them the way you find out about most things nobody warned you about. Carrier bans here aren't about the sections themselves. They're about the transition points, where 2025 freight demands meet 1980 infrastructure in real time. That gap is where the incident reports live. Number 4, Highway 2, Alberta corridor into Montana. Cross the border from Alberta into Montana on Highway 2, and the scenery is extraordinary. Glacier National Park on one side, the Rocky Mountain front on the other. A two-lane road that looks like someone commissioned it for a nature documentary. The road does not behave like a nature documentary. International freight here deals with hazards purely domestic routes don't produce. 2 different DOTs, 2 different maintenance budgets, 2 different definitions of what a pothole requires before anyone fixes it, wildlife crossings that don't negotiate, conditions that shift from clear to whiteout in the time it takes to finish a cup of coffee that was already getting cold. Several carriers have placed this corridor on a restricted nighttime list, not because the daytime run is comfortable, because the nighttime run keeps showing up in the incident reports. Number 3, Dalton Highway, Alaska. 414 miles, one road. The nearest hospital for most of its length is in Fairbanks, which, on a bad weather day, might as well be on a different continent. The Dalton runs from the end of the paved road north of Fairbanks to Dead Horse and the Prudhoe Bay oil fields on the Arctic Ocean. The grade at Adigan Pass hits 12% through the Brooks Range at an elevation where the weather isn't seasonal. The weather is continuous. Carrier policies on the Dalton are some of the most detailed in American trucking. Mandatory communication windows, survival gear requirements beyond federal minimums, load restrictions at Adigan that exist nowhere else in any carrier's network. You don't run the Dalton uninformed. The uninformed version of that trip has a different ending than the one you planned for. Number 2, the Natchez Trace Parkway, deep south, night running. The Natchez Trace Parkway runs 444 miles from Natchez, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee. The National Park Service manages it. Commercial trucks are prohibited on it. So why is it on this list? Because it's not the trace itself. It's the surface roads that parallel it through Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee that created enough incidents that several carriers banned the entire regional corridor after dark. At 2 in the morning out here, there is no lighting, no signage, wildlife crossing without warning, and county road intersections that appear before you have a name for them. The carriers that restrict this corridor aren't banning a road, they're banning a driving environment. It's not one road, it's a feeling, and the feeling is correct. Number 1, Highway 80 and US Route 191, Cochise County, Arizona. The banned road nobody talks about publicly. A major carrier's internal document surfaced on a trucking forum, and drivers recognized the location before they finished the first sentence. Cochise County, southeastern Arizona, Mexican border. Highway 80 runs east to west through Tombstone and Bisbee. 191 runs north to south through the Sulphur Springs Valley. Either road looks manageable on its own. At night, with a load worth stealing, in one of the most documented smuggling corridors on the southern border, they become something else entirely. The carrier document named specific pullout areas along Highway 80 and prohibited any driver from stopping anywhere in Cochise County between sunset and sunrise for any reason. The breakdown protocol was lock the cab, stay inside, and wait for a company response team. A breakdown protocol that does not involve getting out of the truck. That's number 1. So, what does a company ban actually mean when dispatch hands you a route with a road on that list? It means someone already paid for the information you're about to ignore. Carriers don't write bans because a road looks scary on a map. They write them because something happened. Enough somethings. Until the actuaries had a meeting, the meeting became a memo. and the memo has your name on it now. 3 rules. Trust your gut long enough to ask what the alternate is. Get your company's restricted list in writing and keep it somewhere you can find it. And drop your own banned route in the comments, exit number and all, because somebody running it tonight hasn't learned it yet. Almost none of these roads are banned because they're hard to drive. They're banned because of what happens in the space between hard to drive and help is on the way. That space is where the policy gets written. Keep the rubber side down.